When we think about time, most of us measure it in days, weeks, or maybe months, but rarely do we stop to measure our lives in decades. 30 years feels far away, almost untouchable, so we tend to focus on what's urgent right now. But what if you realize that a small, deliberate investment of time today could ripple through the next 3 decades of your life? Suddenly, 3 hours doesn't feel so small. It feels powerful. Imagine setting aside just 3 hours with absolute intention. No distractions, no interruptions, no multitasking. Just 3 hours of complete focus on your life. That block of time can be the moment where you stop living on autopilot and begin to steer your future in a new direction. It may not seem like much compared to the thousands of hours that make up a lifetime, but the clarity, decisions, and commitments you make in that space of time can redirect your entire path. Think about how often people spend hours scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, or replaying the same worries in their mind. Those hours slip away without adding anything to their future. But when you reclaim just a fraction of that time and use it intentionally, it becomes a seed, and seeds grow. One small, intentional investment has the potential to shape decades of growth, change, and fulfillment. The truth is, transformation doesn't always come from years of grinding. It often starts with one clear moment of focus, one choice, one decision, one reframe in your thinking. When you sit down and give yourself the gift of undivided attention, you're telling your future that it matters. You're deciding to stop drifting and start designing. Those 3 hours aren't about solving everything. They're about opening the door to a new way of living. Consider how many people reach the end of 30 years and wonder how they got there. They look back and realize life just happened to them. They didn't stop to reflect, to plan, to act with intention. And because of that, decades passed without real change. But for the person who carves out a few focused hours to ask hard questions, make aligned choices, and commit to action, the next 30 years unfold with direction rather than default. It's not about how long you live in terms of numbers. It's about the quality of the life you create, and quality doesn't happen by accident. It comes from choices. Those choices don't have to be complicated or overwhelming. They can begin with something as simple as 3 hours of reflection and planning. What makes it powerful is not the length of time, but the focus and intention behind it. Think about the times in your life when a single conversation, a single decision, or a single realization changed everything for you. Those moments didn't require weeks of preparation. They happened because you slowed down long enough to pay attention and make a different choice. That's exactly what 3 focused hours can do. They can serve as the spark that ignites decades of progress. If you wait until everything is perfect, you'll never begin. You'll keep telling yourself you'll make time later, when things calm down or when the conditions are right, but later becomes months, then years, and before you know it, decades are gone. Choosing to invest 3 hours today means you stop postponing your future, you stop waiting for clarity to come to you, and instead create it for yourself. Think of it like steering a ship. A small adjustment in direction doesn't seem like much at the start. But over a long distance, that tiny shift completely changes the destination. 3 hours is that shift. It's the deliberate pause that allows you to correct your course so that 30 years from now, you end up where you actually want to be instead of where the current carried you. And the beauty of this is that it's available to everyone. You don't need extraordinary resources, money, or status to claim those hours. You just need willingness. The willingness to step away from distractions, face yourself honestly, and choose with intention. 3 hours may not feel like a lot, but when you measure life in decades, it might be the most valuable investment you ever make. Once you have taken the time to reflect and understand where you currently stand, the next step is to create a vision for where you want to go. Vision is more than a dream. It is the mental picture of the life you want to live, painted with clarity and detail. Without a vision, it's easy to wander aimlessly, hoping things will improve, yet never moving in a meaningful direction. A vision gives you something to aim at, something to measure your actions against, and something that can keep you grounded when distractions pull you away. But vision alone is not enough. Many people stop at this stage and mistake wishful thinking for progress. They imagine a better life, but never take the time to anchor it with a plan. That's why strategy is so critical. Strategy is the bridge between desire and reality. It's the process of turning vague intentions into specific steps that you can follow. You don't need to have every answer, but you do need to map out the first steps clearly enough so that your vision begins to feel real and attainable. When you design your strategy, it helps to break it down into categories. Health, relationships, finances, personal growth, and emotional well-being are some of the key areas that will carry you through 30 years. If you want to be healthy, your strategy could start with committing to a simple exercise routine or improving one daily habit. If your vision is financial freedom, your strategy might involve setting up a savings plan, learning new skills, or building multiple streams of income. Whatever the area, strategy transforms your vision from something abstract into something actionable. Another part of creating a strategy is recognizing what needs to be removed from your life. It's not only about adding new routines or habits, but also about eliminating the ones that pull you further from your vision. A clear strategy involves subtraction as much as addition. For example, if you want stronger relationships, your strategy may not only involve spending more quality time with loved ones, but also reducing time spent on draining, one-sided connections. By pruning what doesn't align, you make space for what does. Clarity is key in this stage. A vague plan like, I want to be happier, doesn't provide enough direction to change your life. Instead, you need to define what happiness looks like for you. Does it mean more peace of mind, better work-life balance, or meaningful connections? Once you identify the specifics, you can build a strategy that directly supports them. The clearer the picture, the easier it becomes to identify steps that align with it. It's also important to remember that strategy is not set in stone. Life changes, circumstances shift, and what seemed like the right direction at one point may evolve into something different. The purpose of a strategy is not to lock you into one rigid path, but to keep you moving with intention. You can adjust and refine along the way, but without that initial framework, you risk wandering without direction. The process of creating a vision and strategy also forces you to confront your priorities. You can't chase everything at once, and trying to do so usually leaves you scattered and burned out. By defining your vision, you decide what matters most for the next 30 years. By shaping your strategy, you decide what deserves your time, energy, and focus. This narrowing of focus doesn't limit you, it frees you. It removes the clutter and noise so you can give your best to what truly matters. One of the biggest mistakes people make is overcomplicating their strategy. They design plans so detailed and overwhelming that they never follow through. Simplicity is far more powerful. Small, consistent steps aligned with a clear vision will carry you further than grand but unrealistic plans that are abandoned after a few weeks. Your strategy doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be doable. And the simpler it is, the more sustainable it becomes over decades. When you invest this second hour into vision and strategy, you're not just writing goals on paper. You're architecting the blueprint of your life. You're setting up a framework that gives structure to your days, weeks, and years. Every action you take after this becomes easier to evaluate. Does this move me closer to my vision or further away? That kind of clarity eliminates confusion and indecision, replacing them with purpose. The value of this hour is that it transforms possibility into direction. It takes the raw energy of desire and channels it into a path you can actually walk. Many people dream of a better future, but few take the time to define it clearly and design a way to reach it. This hour separates wishful thinking from intentional living. It's where imagination meets discipline, and where you begin shaping a future that reflects not just what you want, but what you are truly committed to creating. The third hour is where everything begins to take form, because reflection and vision mean little without the courage to act. Commitment is the decision that what you have discovered about yourself and the future you envision will not remain just words or ideas. It's the shift from thinking into doing, from intention into motion. When you commit, you draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am choosing to become, and this is where I'm choosing to go. That declaration alone begins to reshape your identity and align your behavior with your future. Action often feels overwhelming because people think they need to take giant leaps. But commitment is less about massive moves and more about consistent ones. It's choosing to do the small thing you can do today that reflects the bigger vision you hold for tomorrow. For example, if your vision includes health, action might look like a single workout or swapping one unhealthy choice for a better one. If your vision involves financial stability, it might begin with opening a savings account or cutting one unnecessary expense. The size of the action doesn't matter. The act of moving forward does. This hour also demands that you face resistance. The human brain is wired to resist change because change feels unsafe. Even if your old patterns don't serve you, they feel familiar, and familiarity feels comfortable. Commitment means leaning into discomfort. It means acknowledging the voice in your head that says, I can't, I'll fail, I'll do it later, and choosing to act anyway. Action taken despite resistance is what begins to rewire your brain and build trust in yourself. One of the most overlooked parts of commitment is accountability. When you commit silently, it's easy to back out when the pressure comes. But when you speak your commitment, write it down, or share it with someone you trust, you add weight to your decision. You make it real. That accountability doesn't have to mean telling the world. It can simply mean being honest with yourself in writing or keeping a journal of your progress. Each small record of action strengthens your resolve and reminds you why you started. In this hour, you also learn that commitment is not an emotional state, it's a choice. If you wait until you feel motivated every day, your progress will always be inconsistent. Motivation rises and falls, but commitment creates stability. Action taken without waiting for perfect feelings builds discipline, and discipline is what sustains change over decades. You don't need to feel like it, you need to honor the decision you already made. Another aspect of this stage is redefining failure. Action will never be perfect. You'll miss days, slip up, and make mistakes. But failure only becomes permanent when it leads to quitting. Commitment reframes failure as feedback. Every setback becomes information you can use to adjust your approach. When you are committed, failure doesn't push you off track. It teaches you where to strengthen your strategy and continue moving forward. This hour also calls for clarity in action steps. Vague intentions like, I'll be better with my time, or I'll take care of my health, aren't powerful enough to hold you accountable. Specific actions like, I'll wake up 30 minutes earlier, or I'll prepare healthy meals for the week, bring focus to your commitment. Clarity removes excuses because you either did the action or you didn't. Ambiguity is the enemy of commitment, while specificity strengthens it. When you begin to act, even in the smallest ways, you start to build momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reinforces your belief in your ability to change. Each completed action creates a sense of accomplishment that feeds your motivation to keep going. It's like pushing a heavy wheel. The first push is the hardest, but once it's moving, each additional push requires less effort. Momentum comes only after the initial step, which is why this hour of action is so vital. Over time, repeated action becomes habit. Habits require less conscious effort and become part of who you are rather than something you have to force yourself to do. The goal of this hour is not to do everything at once, but to set into motion habits that will carry you for the next 30 years. One choice repeated consistently can become a lifestyle, and a lifestyle creates results that last. Ultimately, this third hour transforms your reflection and vision into reality by anchoring them in action. It's not glamorous, and it doesn't always feel inspiring, but it's the piece that determines whether your next 30 years are shaped by design or by default. Commitment ensures you don't just dream about change, you live it through daily choices that align with the person you want to be. Life often feels like it is defined by the big moments, graduations, career breakthroughs, marriages, losses, and turning points. But in reality, the direction of a life is rarely determined by those singular, dramatic events. Instead, it is quietly shaped by the small, almost invisible choices made day after day. These are the moments that don't get applause, that no one sees, but over time they compound into something far greater than they appeared to be in the moment. A single choice to spend 15 minutes journaling instead of scrolling your phone may not seem significant today, but repeated over years, it creates clarity of mind and emotional resilience. Choosing to set aside a small portion of money each week may look insignificant in the short term, but across decades it can mean financial security and freedom. Small choices are like seeds. Planted consistently, they grow roots and branches that shape the entire structure of your life. The power of these small decisions lies in their consistency. Anyone can make a dramatic change once or twice, but it is the repeated choices that build character and transform circumstances. When you understand this, you stop underestimating the little things. You begin to see that discipline in the smallest of areas, how you speak to yourself, how you use your time, how you treat your body, creates ripple effects that touch every part of your life. What makes small choices so powerful is that they are accessible. You don't need extraordinary resources or special conditions to make them. You don't need to wait for the perfect time. They are within your control at any given moment, no matter your circumstances. This means that no matter how overwhelming the bigger picture feels, you can always influence your future by choosing wisely in the present. At the same time, it's important to recognize that small, destructive choices carry just as much power in the opposite direction. Skipping one day of effort doesn't ruin you, but the habit of continually choosing what feels easy over what aligns with your vision gradually pulls you off course. Just as positive habits compound to create strength, negative habits compound to create weakness. It's never about one moment, it's about the pattern that moment creates when repeated. These choices also redefine how we view progress. Many people quit because they can't see immediate results, forgetting that outcomes are often invisible in the early stages. The person who exercises for a week won't see transformation, but the choice is still shaping their body, their energy, and their confidence. The person who saves a small amount won't feel wealthy overnight, but they are laying the foundation for stability. Small choices teach us patience, reminding us that lasting change grows quietly before it becomes visible. Another overlooked aspect of small decisions is how they shape identity. Every time you make a choice aligned with the person you want to become, you cast a vote for that identity. Choosing to read instead of mindlessly watching television is not just about that moment. It's about reinforcing the belief that you are someone who values growth. Over time, enough of these small votes create a new self-image, and your behavior begins to naturally flow from that identity. Small choices also protect you from paralysis. Big goals can feel overwhelming, so overwhelming that you never start. But when you break down a goal into the next small choice, the process feels manageable. You don't need to know how you'll accomplish everything in 30 years. You just need to choose the action that's possible today. That choice leads to the next, and before long, you've built a chain of progress that would have felt impossible to imagine in the beginning. There's also something deeply empowering about realizing that control lies in the small. So much of life feels uncertain and unpredictable, yet your choices remain within your grasp. You can't control what happens in the world, but you can control how you respond, what you practice, and where you direct your energy. Those small choices create a sense of stability even in uncertain times because they remind you that you are not powerless. When you look back years from now, it won't be one single moment that defined the life you lived. It will be the collection of thousands of choices, quiet, simple, often unnoticed, that determined the person you became and the life you experienced. The power of small choices is that they are both humble and monumental. They don't feel life-changing in the moment, but over time they shape everything. When people look back on their lives, many realize that they never intentionally designed the path they were on. They simply reacted to what was in front of them, moving from one situation to the next, until years turned into decades. Drifting feels safe because it requires little effort. You don't have to make difficult decisions or confront uncomfortable truths when you let life carry you. But drifting always comes at a cost. The price is waking up one day in a place you never wanted to be, wondering how you got there. Designing your future is not about controlling every detail of your life, but about stepping into the driver's seat. It's about recognizing that while you can't choose every circumstance, you can choose the direction you move in. A life designed with intention may not always go exactly as planned, but it has a foundation that keeps you grounded when life shifts unexpectedly. Without that design, the winds of circumstance decide your course, and you are left without a sense of direction. One of the biggest differences between drifting and designing is awareness. When you drift, you operate on autopilot, repeating the same routines without questioning whether they are leading you toward the future you want. When you design, you pause long enough to reflect, evaluate, and make deliberate adjustments. That awareness creates opportunities for change. It shifts you from passively experiencing life to actively shaping it. Designing your future requires courage because it forces you to confront the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That gap can feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it's also where growth begins. Drifting avoids the discomfort of facing that gap, but it traps you in cycles that keep repeating. Choosing to design your future means you accept the discomfort as a necessary part of building something meaningful. Another key difference is that drifting is reactive, while designing is proactive. Drifting waits for life to present opportunities, challenges, or crises, and then scrambles to respond. Designing looks ahead and asks, what do I want to create? What do I need to prepare for? What matters most in the long run? That forward-looking mindset doesn't eliminate difficulties, but it equips you to meet them with purpose rather than panic. The process of design also involves clarity of values. You can't create a future that fulfills you if you don't know what you stand for. Many people drift because they've never defined their values, so they simply adopt the priorities of those around them. Designing your life forces you to ask, what truly matters to me? What do I want to give my time and energy to? Once you know your values, decisions become easier because you can measure every opportunity against whether it aligns with those core principles. Designing your future also requires structure. A vision without structure remains a dream. Structure doesn't have to be rigid. It simply gives your intentions a framework. That might mean setting goals, creating systems, or building routines that keep you aligned with your vision. Without structure, even the best intentions dissolve into wishful thinking. With structure, you create habits that carry you forward even when motivation fades. There's also an element of responsibility in designing your life. Drifting allows you to blame circumstances, people, or luck for where you end up. Designing removes that excuse. It demands that you take ownership of your choices, your habits, and your direction. That responsibility can feel heavy at first, but it's also empowering. It means you are not at the mercy of chance. You are capable of shaping your path. Designing your future doesn't mean avoiding mistakes. You will still take wrong turns, make missteps, and face setbacks. The difference is that when you are intentional, even your mistakes serve a purpose. They teach you, refine your direction, and make your design stronger. When you drift, mistakes don't teach. They simply accumulate, leaving you stuck in patterns that repeat without progress. Over 30 years, the gap between drifting and designing becomes enormous. A life of drifting may look full on the surface, but it often lacks depth, purpose, and satisfaction. A life of design may still face challenges, but it carries meaning because it was created with intention. The decision to design your future is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's the choice to stop being carried by default and start shaping by design. Life by default is the path of least resistance. It is waking up each day and going through routines that were never chosen consciously, but simply inherited from habit, circumstance, or other people's expectations. It feels easier in the moment because it doesn't require thought, reflection, or intention, but it gradually leads to a life where you feel detached from your own choices. When you live by default, years pass in repetition, and you begin to wonder why things never really change. Reflection disrupts that cycle. Taking time to pause and look inward forces you to examine where you are, why you are there, and whether it truly aligns with who you want to become. Reflection allows you to see patterns that may have controlled you for years without you realizing it. It uncovers the ways you have been drifting and gives you the insight to decide if that is still the path you want. Without reflection, you continue moving without awareness, and without awareness, there is no possibility of change. Planning builds on reflection by providing direction. Once you know what you want and what needs to change, planning allows you to map a path forward. This doesn't mean predicting every step or controlling every outcome, but it does mean deciding what matters most and outlining the actions that align with those priorities. A plan provides structure, clarity, and a way to measure whether you are moving closer to or further from your vision. Without planning, good intentions stay vague and never translate into meaningful progress. Action is the force that brings reflection and planning into reality. It is one thing to know what you want and another to take steps toward it. Action is what transforms thoughts into habits, habits into patterns, and patterns into results. Without action, reflection becomes endless overthinking and planning becomes an exercise in imagination. Action doesn't have to be perfect or dramatic, it simply has to be consistent. Even small actions, when repeated, begin to reshape your life. When you combine reflection, planning, and action, you create a cycle of growth. Reflection keeps you aware, planning keeps you focused, and action keeps you moving. Each one strengthens the other. Reflection without action becomes stagnant. Action without planning becomes scattered. Planning without reflection becomes disconnected from reality. Together, they provide balance and momentum that carry you forward with intention rather than drift. Living by design means stepping into responsibility. It means accepting that your choices, not luck, not chance, not other people, are shaping your future. That responsibility can feel heavy at first because it removes the comfort of blaming outside factors. But it is also empowering because it reminds you that you have influence. You are not powerless to your circumstances. You can shape them through reflection, planning, and action. There is also a sense of freedom that comes with design. Life by default often feels like being trapped in cycles you don't fully understand. Life by design, on the other hand, creates alignment. When your daily actions connect to your larger vision, you feel a sense of purpose that makes even routine tasks meaningful. You stop asking, "Why am I doing this?" because you know exactly how it connects to the bigger picture you are building. This approach also protects you from regret. Many people look back on decades of their life, wishing they had been more intentional, wishing they had paused to reflect, made plans, or taken consistent action. Living by default almost always leads to that kind of regret because it leaves you at the mercy of circumstance. Living by design doesn't eliminate mistakes, but it reduces regret because even your failures were part of a path you chose with awareness. Reflection, planning, and action also create resilience. When challenges come, and they always do, you are better equipped to respond. Instead of being knocked off course entirely, you know how to reflect on what happened, adjust your plan, and take new action. That resilience allows you to stay true to your vision even in the face of obstacles. Without these tools, setbacks derail you completely, and you fall back into drifting. Over time, the difference between a life by default and a life by design becomes dramatic. At first, the gap may seem small, almost invisible, but across years and decades it widens into two entirely different realities. One is a life of passivity, shaped by forces outside your control, filled with patterns you never chose. The other is a life of intention, built through awareness, direction, and consistent effort. The choice between the two is made not in one grand moment, but in the daily practice of reflection, planning, and action.